It's Thursday, February 5th, 2026, and what we're witnessing across the United States is nothing short of meteorological chaos. Another massive winter storm is forming right now, and this could be the system that finally pushes the eastern United States past its breaking point. We're dealing with the aftermath of not one, but two historic winter storms in just the past 2 weeks, including Winter Storm Gianna, which delivered the heaviest snowfall the Carolinas have seen in over 30 years, with some areas receiving up to 24 inches of snow and hurricane-force wind gusts that reached 80 miles per hour. The death toll from these back-to-back storms has now climbed to over 159 people, making this the deadliest winter weather outbreak since Winter Storm Uri devastated Texas in 2021. And we still have hundreds of thousands without power across multiple states, who are now facing another potentially catastrophic storm system. I've been tracking weather for over a decade, and what we're seeing right now represents one of the most relentless and dangerous winter patterns I have ever observed. The storm that just finished pummeling the Carolinas was supposed to be a once-in-a-generation event. But here we are, less than a week later, watching another potentially historic system organize. This isn't normal winter weather. This is a completely locked weather pattern that shows no signs of breaking, and it's putting millions of people in increasingly desperate situations. The most immediate threat is a new low-pressure system that's beginning to organize across the Great Lakes region as we speak. This system is tapping into the same Arctic air mass that has been relentlessly feeding these storms, and early model guidance suggests it could strengthen significantly as it moves toward the northeast over the next 48 hours. Here's what's particularly alarming. We still have widespread snow cover across much of the eastern United States from the previous storms, which means the ground is primed for additional snow to stick immediately. The National Weather Service has already issued winter storm watches for 15 states, covering areas from the Ohio Valley all the way up into New England, forecasting another 5 to 10 inches of snow with wind gusts exceeding 50 miles per hour. What makes this situation so dangerous is that we're dealing with cumulative impacts. The Carolinas are still digging out from 12 to 24 inches of snow from this past weekend. Charlotte recorded 6.1 inches of snow on January 31st alone, shattering the daily record that had stood since 1948. Some areas of western North Carolina recorded 17 inches of snow, amounts that haven't been seen in that region for decades. Meanwhile, the cold has been absolutely brutal and persistent. We're seeing temperatures that are 20 to 40 degrees below average across the entire eastern half of the United States. Florida has experienced some of the coldest temperatures in over 15 years, with freeze warnings extending all the way down into Miami-Dade and Broward counties. Orlando and Daytona Beach have seen temperatures drop into the 20s, and wind chills have reached into the teens across South Florida. The human toll continues to mount. We now have confirmed fatalities in multiple states, with hypothermia-related deaths being reported as far south as South Carolina and Georgia. The power outage situation remains critical, with hundreds of thousands still without electricity from the previous storms. In some areas of Mississippi, Tennessee, and Louisiana, people have been without power for over 2 weeks now. This new storm system is following almost the exact same track as the previous systems, which means it's going to impact areas that are already severely compromised. Roads that haven't been fully cleared from the last storm are going to get hit again. Power lines that were just repaired are going to face another round of high winds. The storm is expected to develop rapidly as it moves across the Great Lakes tonight and tomorrow. By Thursday evening, we should see the first bands of snow beginning to develop across the Ohio Valley. And by Friday morning, this system will be impacting areas from Pittsburgh all the way up through Boston. Current forecasting models are showing a widespread 6 to 12 inches of snow across much of Pennsylvania, New York, and northern New Jersey, with locally higher amounts possible in areas that see the heaviest snow bands develop. The storm track suggests that cities like Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston could all see significant impacts, with snowfall rates potentially reaching 2 to 3 inches per hour during the height of the storm Friday night into Saturday morning. But it's not just the snow that has me concerned. It's the wind. This system is going to tap into the same Arctic air mass that powered the previous storms. And that means we're looking at sustained winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour, with gusts potentially exceeding 50 miles per hour. In areas that already have snow on the ground from previous storms, this is going to create widespread blowing and drifting snow, making travel extremely hazardous. The wind chill situation is going to be particularly dangerous. By this weekend, wind chills could reach -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit across areas from upstate New York down through Pennsylvania and into the Ohio Valley. These are life-threatening conditions, especially for anyone who loses power or heat. Speaking of power outages, that's perhaps my biggest concern with this storm. The previous storms have already stressed the power grid to its limits in many areas. We have crews that have been working around the clock for weeks trying to restore power, and now they're going to face another round of high winds and heavy snow. In areas that are still without power from the previous events, this could extend outages by several more days or even weeks. What makes this weather pattern so unprecedented is its persistence. Typically, we might see one major winter storm followed by a period of more typical winter weather. But what we're experiencing is a completely locked pattern where storm after storm is following the same general track, tapping into the same Arctic air mass and impacting the same regions repeatedly. It's creating a compounding effect, where each storm becomes more dangerous than the last. The economic impact is already staggering, with preliminary damage estimates from the January storms exceeding $4 billion. Airlines have canceled over 15,000 flights in the past 2 weeks, and Amtrak has suspended service on multiple routes. Supply chains are being severely disrupted, with delivery delays affecting everything from food supplies to medical equipment. For this immediate storm threat, the timeline is clear. Snow will begin developing across the Ohio Valley late Thursday night, spreading into the mid-Atlantic and Northeast by Friday morning. The heaviest snow is expected Friday night into Saturday morning, with the storm beginning to pull away from the coast by Saturday afternoon. Areas most at risk for the heaviest snow include central and eastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley of New York, and southern New England. These areas could see 8 to 14 inches of snow, with locally higher amounts possible. The I-95 corridor from Philadelphia to Boston is under a high-confidence forecast for significant impacts. Temperature-wise, this storm will reinforce the existing Arctic air mass rather than moderate it. High temperatures will remain well below freezing across most of the affected areas, with many locations struggling to reach the single digits for daytime highs. Overnight lows will be particularly brutal, with widespread sub-zero readings expected from the Great Lakes down through the Ohio Valley. Emergency management officials are strongly urging people to complete their preparations immediately. This includes having enough food, water, and medications for at least a week, ensuring you have backup heating sources if your primary heat goes out, and making sure you have a way to communicate if cell towers are affected by the storm. If you're in the path of this storm, now is the time to act. Don't wait until the snow starts falling to get prepared, because by then, it may be too late. Stock up on supplies today, charge all your devices, and have a plan for what you'll do if you lose power or heat. What we're witnessing is essentially a meteorological nightmare scenario, where each storm feeds off the previous one's impacts, creating a cascading disaster that emergency management officials are struggling to keep up with. The atmospheric setup driving these repeated storms is what meteorologists call a stuck pattern. The jet stream has become locked in a configuration that keeps pulling Arctic air south while providing energy for storm development along the same track. This pattern has been in place for over 3 weeks now, and long-range forecasting models suggest it could persist for at least another 10 to 14 days. I want to stress the historical significance of what we're experiencing. The combination of back-to-back bomb cyclones affecting the same regions, with such devastating impacts, is unprecedented in modern meteorological records. The previous record for consecutive major winter storms in the eastern United States was set during the winter of 1993-94, but even that pales in comparison to the sustained intensity and geographic scope of what we're seeing now. The infrastructure implications are staggering and will likely have lasting effects for months or even years. Power companies are reporting that in some areas, they're essentially rebuilding entire sections of the electrical grid from scratch. The weight of repeated ice and snow accumulations has caused thousands of power poles to snap, and the persistent cold is making repair work extremely dangerous and slow. Utility crews are working in conditions where temperatures haven't risen above zero in some areas for over a week straight. Transportation networks are facing similar challenges that extend far beyond simple delays. Airports from Atlanta to Boston have seen over 15,000 flight cancellations, and many are reporting that it will take weeks to clear the backlog of stranded passengers and delayed cargo. Railway systems are dealing with frozen switches, snow-blocked tracks, and equipment failures caused by the extreme cold. Interstate highways remain partially closed in multiple states, and even once this current storm passes, it will take significant time to restore normal transportation operations. The human cost continues to mount in ways that extend far beyond the immediate weather impacts. Hospitals in affected areas are reporting increased admissions for hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning from improperly used heating sources, and injuries related to snow removal and ice falls. Emergency shelters are at capacity in multiple states, and the American Red Cross is calling this one of their largest disaster responses in recent history. The psychological toll on communities that have been without power for weeks is becoming increasingly apparent. For farmers and livestock operations across the affected region, this pattern has been absolutely devastating. The repeated storms and persistent cold have made it nearly impossible to care for animals in many rural areas, and crop storage facilities have been damaged by the weight of snow and ice. The economic ripple effects will likely be felt in food prices and agricultural markets for the remainder of 2026, as supply chains for everything from dairy products to grain shipments have been severely disrupted. Looking specifically at this weekend's storm, I'm particularly concerned about several cities that are directly in the crosshairs. Pittsburgh could see some of the heaviest snow, with accumulations potentially reaching 12 to 16 inches. The city is already dealing with snow removal challenges from previous storms, and adding another foot of snow could completely paralyze the area. Snow removal equipment is breaking down from overuse, and the city is running out of places to put additional snow. Philadelphia and New York City are both facing the prospect of their second significant snow event in less than 2 weeks, with each city potentially seeing 8 to 12 inches of additional snow. Both metropolitan areas are dealing with public transportation systems that are already struggling to operate in the existing conditions. The subway systems in both cities have been experiencing delays and service disruptions due to equipment freezing and power issues. Boston represents perhaps the most concerning scenario, as the city could see the storm track in a way that produces extremely heavy snow bands right over the metropolitan area. If the storm tracks just 50 miles further east, Boston could see relatively light impacts. But if it tracks 50 miles further west, the city could be looking at 15 to 20 inches of snow, with hurricane-force wind gusts creating complete whiteout conditions. The city's snow removal budget has already been exhausted, and officials are considering emergency measures to deal with additional accumulations. The wind component of this storm cannot be understated. We're looking at sustained winds of 30 to 40 miles per hour, with gusts potentially reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour, particularly along the coast. This will create dangerous blowing and drifting snow that will make travel impossible even on major highways. Visibility will drop to near zero at times, and wind chills will make it feel like -40 to -50 degrees Fahrenheit in the worst affected areas. The cold that follows this storm will be particularly dangerous because it will interact with all the fresh snow on the ground to create what meteorologists call a snow refrigerator effect. Areas with deep snow cover we'll see temperatures drop even lower than they would otherwise, and the snow will prevent any meaningful warm-up for weeks to come. Some areas may not see temperatures rise above freezing for the rest of February. Emergency management officials across the region are implementing emergency protocols that haven't been used since Hurricane Sandy. The combination of power outages, transportation shutdowns, and life-threatening cold is creating a perfect storm of challenges that are testing the limits of disaster response capabilities. The National Guard remains activated in multiple states, and federal emergency resources continue to flow into the affected areas. Stay safe, stay prepared, and stay warm as this dangerous situation continues to unfold. This is not just another winter storm. This is part of a historic weather pattern that will be remembered as one of the most challenging winter emergencies in modern American history. I've been tracking weather for over a decade, and what we're seeing right now represents one of the most relentless and dangerous winter patterns I have ever observed. The storm that just finished pummeling the Carolinas was supposed to be a once-in-a-generation event. But here we are, less than a week later, watching another potentially historic system organize. This isn't normal winter weather. This is a completely locked weather pattern that shows no signs of breaking, and it's putting millions of people in increasingly desperate situations. The most immediate threat is a new low-pressure system that's beginning to organize across the Great Lakes region as we speak. This system is tapping into the same Arctic air mass that has been relentlessly feeding these storms, and early model guidance suggests it could strengthen significantly as it moves toward the northeast over the next 48 hours.